welcome to Will Throw the After Party. 3 things happened during that very short intro that I want to call out. One is that I realized it's been months of Alexis being just Alexis Blake, and we have yet to edit the show intro to reflect that, so you can find her on all the platforms. So we'll do that after the show.
I commented on that like months ago.
I know you did. It's just I haven't gotten there. The second thing is I'd like everybody watching to comment and let us know if you are a Pepsi or a Coke products apologist. We had a conversation pre-show, and it's why I was late starting the show because we were so invested in hearing everyone's take on this. So we'll let the comments chime in for a second, and then we'll circle back on it. So nice to see everyone tonight. Welcome back, Leah P. and Sylvan and Bunky. And the third thing that happened during that intro was I realized I forgot to take my puffer before we started. So get ready. Someone's going to trigger the puffer moment of the show. You can place your bets in the comments now.
Is that what Sly was laughing at? I saw Sly laughing at something. I didn't know what had happened.
I was laughing at the comments in the private chat.
Oh.
In which, just for reflection, my comment was, I'm opening by asking people if they are a Pepsi or a Coke drinker. So let's just go around the circle and we can catch everybody up on our week. We're having a bit of a different show tonight. Marissa is at Into the Woods, living her best life. So we are supporting her and very envious of the night she's having, but very happy to be hanging out with all of you. She'll be back next week. And we are going to talk about Bridgerton tonight. And we have so much to talk about that this is going to be the first show in a very long time with no rant section. We're really going to dig into it tonight with you guys, and we're so excited to talk about the new show premiering next week and our thoughts on Bridgerton season 1 and 2. I've done a lot of research, so we're going to talk about what to expect from next week, and if you've watched the show or haven't watched the show, you're going to be ready to watch it starting on Thursday. Okay, let's talk about our weeks, and as we go, I want to just share where our audience is pulling at in terms of Coke or Pepsi products. Coke 100%, Coke all the way. We have some non-soda drinkers, which I deeply respect.
As you should be.
This is a Coke product audience. Okay, I'm loving it. I'll start by saying I left my Diet Coke in the car, which I'm very sad about. So instead of walking down the stairs to get it, which would be a very easy choice, I instead decided to put water in my Spider-Man cup to make me feel better. So we're going for a Diet Coke-less show on my end. And I also was not a soda girly until literally a few months ago when I leaned on it to survive a conference I was running. But that's not what I've been enjoying this week other than copious amounts of Diet Coke. I've been enjoying rewatching Shadow and Bone because we're doing a Shadow and Bone takeover very soon on the show. And instead of watching all of Bridgerton, I just went right back down the rabbit hole of Shadow and Bone. I've been enjoying following all of the PR that's come out over the past week. So we're going to talk about that in the what we've been enjoying section because, oh man, it's been a week. Everyone decided to have a story this week, and I've been, trying to piece it together like that insane guy with the murder board and his eyes are bloodshot. That's been me this week. And it's kind of been me. It's been a lot of Shadow and Bone. I was a little bit under the weather a few days ago, and I'm feeling better now. So that's where I'm coming in at. Alexis, let's start by acknowledging your very iconic outfit this evening. You really came dressed to impress.
Thank you. I was running from something else, so I'm glad.
It works. It's giving regal, which is the theme of tonight's episode, isn't it?
Yes.
So are you a Diet Coke girly, or are you a Pepsi girly? Where are we?
I was a Coke girly. I can't do diet. I'm allergic to diet, but I was a Coke girly until I became a very obnoxious coffee person. And now I don't really drink Coke as much. Like every once in a while, I'll have a little bit for a taste, but I kind of exchanged that for coffee, I guess.
I went the opposite way. I had to stop drinking so much coffee, so I just leaned directly into Diet Coke instead. I don't know how that works. How's your week been going? What's going on in your world?
Academia is sometimes rough. And I think everybody here knows, but for those of you who don't know, I'm working on a graduate degree. I'm in graduate school. And so this week was the second leg of our 2-week finals week. We had like a bunch of I shouldn't say surprise assignments, but like assignments that were outside of the scope of what we thought they were going to be. So I haven't really slept this week. This week was a lot. But I did receive an email from my professor this morning, which is, for context, our last honors day. Sly and JJ were getting live updates, but was a little bit of like a dramatic disaster. But the food that was catered was all like meat heavy, like almost obnoxiously. Like it was like steak and crab kebabs, or like, chicken and bologna sandwiches. Like it was like meat, right? And so I couldn't, I just didn't eat anything, and that's fine. And this is probably like the third or fourth of it. And we've had like that where, I'm vegan, there's another student that's vegetarian, and like we're just like completely forgotten, like off the face of the planet. But I got an email this morning that was like, so I'm bringing pizza for all the students on Monday, and like, I know you're vegan. What are vegan pizza options in East Tennessee? The answer of which, like, none that we want to try, but thank you for thinking of me. So that's
sweet.
That was a highlight of my academic week, I guess.
I thought that story was going to end in, is there meat on pizza, or something like more along that line of people trying to understand if that's a food group that you are eligible to eat. But no, I'm glad that we got that far. It's more about the vegan side of it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sly, where do you come in on the Coke Pepsi side of the scale?
Well, I don't drink dark soda. So like if we're talking Pepsi versus Coke, the answer is neither. But products wise, I am a strong believer that Sierra Mist is the superior lemon lime soda. So I do follow on the Pepsi products side of the debate.
And I feel like, Sly, since it's your turn, we have to acknowledge the Canada of it all, because it would only be right to talk about Canadian products when it's your turn to speak. Where do you fall in the Sprite Canada Dry?
So I like all lemon lime sodas. Sprite is fine. It's a little too sweet for me, but it'll do. I, unfortunately, am a ginger beer person, and I do not like Canada Dry.
You're not going to be allowed into the country. I'm so sorry to ruin your Canadian
hate
dreams.
To break it
to you,
but no,
they ask you that. It's on like the declaration form. Will you drink Canada Dry? If you say no, they just turn you around. Like,
I'm not a big ginger ale person. I will take a ginger beer any day of the week, but it's very rare that you will see me with a ginger ale. And yes, they are incredibly different.
Oh, they are incredibly different. Listen, it's been great having you on the show. I really enjoyed having you here for the past.
Wow.
That is a deal breaker, unfortunately. I'm kidding. I will have to talk to Fee about that, though. We'll have to make this a cross-show problem for you to address.
Oh, don't worry. It already has been.
Okay, other than, well, I don't know what I've been enjoying. Now my week's been ruined by Sly not liking Canada Dry, but I'll get over it. Let's talk about what we've been enjoying this week. Maybe we'll go one for one here, because I feel like we all have a really long list. Sly and I are both, actually all three of us, are we all invested in the NHL playoffs, or is it just Sly and I that have been on it this week?
You know what? I really love when Liz makes last minute changes to the show doc and then doesn't follow them. And yes, I am calling you out loud.
Oh yeah, I totally skipped over after you made that Canada Dry comment. Do you want to share what your week was like before we go there?
Yeah, my week's been incredibly busy as I'm prepping for this hiatus I'm taking coming up. I'm taking at least the first half of May off. So tonight and tomorrow will be my last live events. But in preparation for that, I've been doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, some pre-recording stuff. So MC University will go on as usual. So I had to watch a lot of movies this week. Some of them good, some of them not so good, and we have some incredible guests lined up for MC University. So that's been my week. Keep an eye out. Our next two episodes coming up are Venom 2 with the incomparable Matt Storm, and Morbius with a very special guest. If you spend any time on my end of the games media internet, you'll know who the guest for that episode is, and it'll be great. So keep your eye on that.
I'm so excited to see what's in store, but we're going to miss you while you're on your, I don't even want to say on your break, while you're dealing with everything else. You'll come back to us fresh and ready to keep going towards the end of May. Now, shall we talk about the hockey playoffs now that I have done my show doc not justice? First, Alexis, have you been watching the NHL playoffs? I know I think everyone on the internet is on hockey TikTok right now. I think it's become a bit of a mainstream moment, at least on TikTok for a lot of people. Alexis, where are you in all of this?
Listen, am I participating in watching some of the playoff games? Yes. But what I learned this week is that I enjoy playoffs as filtered through Sly much more than I enjoy them trying to watch them on my own. And two, that like I have just developed, I think, like you said, Liz, because of TikTok, a weird lane of hockey knowledge. Like we were trying to watch, and it was like old hockey, like old, like previously recorded hockey. And I was like, I know this puck is like supposed to go into a goal. I don't understand why we sometimes decide to play bumper cars. I don't know like why sometimes we have like little dance battles behind the goal, or we go sit in the telephone booth and like time out. I don't know like what the axe length is, or like what order that they go in. But then this week in the office, I like correctly answered trivia about like a draft in 2004. So like, it's a weird scope of knowledge, right? Or like Pepsi and bananas. Like I know that, but I don't know why, how long we're supposed to sit in the telephone booth. I just don't.
So the mechanics of the game is not a skill set you have. No,
2, 4, 5.
Absolutely not.
Where did I get 10? I don't know. Don't ignore me.
But like there are some players that I could tell you how many pucks fit on like the length of the hockey stick. I just don't know how long you're supposed to spend in the penalty box. So it's like, it's a fun time over here.
So I feel like between all three of us, we have a really well-rounded knowledge of the sport. It's great. Sly, how's your playoff watch been going?
Stressful. I have one team that I'm following because of location loyalty, and then I have a couple teams that I'm loosely following because they're interesting, and then I have a team I'm following slowly because of the silly little characters in my silly little fan fiction, and I hate that I'm this invested in certain teams. But yeah, my hockey journey so far has been really interesting because I love sports in general. I've always loved sports, and I've tried to get into hockey many a time, and it never really clicked. But getting to go through the process of learning how to like fall in love with the sport again, I forgot how fun it is and how like great it is to just be invested in a sport and picking up more knowledge and experience around it, right? So playoffs has been stressful because sometimes you choose to follow a team and sometimes a team chooses you to follow it. And
very true. Very well said. Very well said.
But yeah, last night was lots of playoffs. There was also NBA playoffs, MENBA playoffs is going on. Also in the realm of sports that I care about, the Dubs preseason starts next week-ish, which will be very great for me personally. I love basketball. It's like up there as my favorite sport. I love playing, I love watching, and I care way more about the WNBA than the MENBA. So when that kicks off, I'll be very excited. But yeah, on the NHL front, I'm very stressed about 2 particular Game 7s coming up. And also there's a Game 6 tonight that I care about. So we'll see how much I'm paying attention when that gets kicked off.
One of the things I love about this conversation for us is that when we started this, when Stark Radio first started, and then when We'll Throw the After Party started, part of our behind the scenes mission of why we wanted to build this community, right? Was to deconstruct popular media in a way that made it accessible for people. And sport, and especially hockey, is something that is so inaccessible outside of a really particular straight male coded audience, or, you know, a heteronormative audience. And there's not a ton
North
of
American audience.
absolutely. And the fact that it's even on the list for us to talk about something like this, I think is really interesting. And it's not because we think our audience is particularly a hockey audience, although maybe some of us are, but it is kind of like our mission here of what we want to do is to like talk about things that you wouldn't really expect someone from East Tennessee, someone from Eastern Canada, someone from West Coast, a combination of folks on screen to like really feel invested in. And yet like here we are all checking the score like while we do the show. I think that's like really actually natural to who we are as a community.
And I will say I am by no means becoming an expert in like hockey and like rules. Like I can follow it because I know how to follow a sports like match or whatever. I do have some serious questions about like rules that when I get over myself and stop feeling dumb for having these questions, I will eventually post to somebody who actually knows anything.
And that is why we built this community, Sly. That is why we built tacos for Sly in the chat, because even being able to have a conversation like this, I support you all the way. I support you all the way.
Yeah.
I do hard to jump into these opinions
about how people are playing. Are they based in any understanding of how to actually play the sport? No, but I did have a heated discussion recently about the idea of pulling a goalie and when you should or should not do so.
Yeah, I think I was having the exact same fucking conversation in my house. I know the exact moment of that game too, in which you were probably saying that.
It's been multiple games.
Okay,
like every time I've seen a goalie get pulled, I've seen a goal scored on an empty net, and I don't get it. Anyways, that's a later conversation.
That's a later conversation. I want to just catch up with the chat here because there's a lot happening. Being in a hockey family, hockey culture, the Canadians watching, I think everyone grows up in a hockey family, even if you're not. You will be on Hockey Talk after this show. I'm sure of that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You've made it. Leah and I on the same wavelength. The Canadian Junior playoffs also happening. Very, very important and interesting dynamics there if you want to like really fall down the rabbit hole. This is really the most important conversation of the night. Alexis coaching a failing hockey team a la Ted Lasso. This is kind of the premise of Shoresy when Shoresy's trying to make his team function. So it's somewhere between like a Ted Lasso and a Shoresy with an Alexis lens on it. There'd have to be an art heist as like a team bonding. Yeah.
There is actually a really fantastic hockey-based con in Leverage that was, I used to say, like, I love hockey, having never seen a game, because I really liked that one episode. Yeah.
Lots of support in the chat about Alexis coaching hockey,
apparently.
which I'm a fan of. Okay. Question from Sylvan. I've been watching Ice Princess compulsively. Does that count? I think we can all answer this together. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And Marissa would agree as well. Hello to Simone, our friend Simone, jumping in the chat. Great to have you live with us. Okay, scrolling down. Beauty is that you don't have to be an expert to enjoy these things. Exactly. That's what we're all here for. To just enjoy as a community. Oh, I love. That's why we're all here.
I will say that I really appreciate Bunky for thinking I'm a human being capable of being casual about anything, as if I have not made this my entire personality based really on no data. Like, I don't do casual fandom at all. It's not a thing.
But you know what we do is we create the space. We create the community for casual fandom, Alexis.
Yeah.
We give the stamp of approval, the Alpine of approval, the casual fandom. We have found
you can be casual, you out there, audience member.
Hold me accountable to doing a Memorial Cup rant in the future. I will jump on the hockey rant train following all of you. Okay, let's
love
hockey.
Also a Liz rant on your opinions on the superstition of touching various cups throughout the playoffs or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If pretend fake plastic ones are acceptable or not. If touching one when you were a baby still counts now because nepotism. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was one.
I ended up on that talk this week.
Okay, I need to catch up on that one. Okay, show of hands, including everybody watching, who has actually seen the Stanley Cup in person? Because all the players, just like in every sport, you have to bring it to your hometown kind of thing. I've seen it multiple times. There's always people that win from my hometown. It was always coming back to our hometown, especially the oh my god, I'm gonna forget the exact team. Anyway, yeah, it's a fun little Canadian thing. Everyone I know has seen the Stanley Cup. Like, it's a very common. It's all the superstition around it. I'm like, yeah, it's here every other year. Like, we see it all the time. It's always here. So that's part of my feelings about the Stanley Cup. Is it's a fine little statue. It's great. Like, it's wonderful. Love it. Gritty, a great marketing tactic. I can add that to a future rant. Okay, let's park hockey for the rest of the show. My Canadian accent really comes out when I say that.
No, because the rest of my
Okay.
No. I meant like that conversation. We can jump back into hockey, but I want to just like quickly pivot. How was 911 this week, everybody? I missed Thirsty Thursday. Give me like a quick little. How are we feeling about 911 this week? Okay, that face really says it all. We can just move right along if you need to.
About what happened, I don't remember. Oh, you know what happened in 911 this week? I was doing a silly little show we like to call Thirsty Thursday, and I posed the question to JJ: how do you feel about themed episodes? We had a themed episode this week. It was Death and Taxes, and I was like, how do you feel about themed episodes, a la Jinx, Curse, etc.? And JJ responded with, you mean, how do I feel about Taylor Wong episodes? And I realized that I didn't process the fact that this week's episode was a Taylor Wong episode, but I knew in my heart, in my gut, that this was a written by Taylor Wong episode. And I was very proud of that for me personally. And I did go back, and almost a year ago, I think next week, was my first rant on why Taylor Wong was the best writer on 911, and I stand by it, and she keeps proving me right, and I cannot wait for my upcoming takeover.
Taylor Wong takeover.
My Taylor Wong Cinematic Universe 911 takeover. It's gonna be amazing.
Obsessed. I can't wait. It's gonna be a fun one. Last time we talked about 911, it was still on the lens of when Rob Lowe and the Frozen person happened, and then there was like the girl. Was she trying to like unalive Rob Lowe or something? Was that part of what? Or she was?
There was.
Is Rob Lowe still in the show? Is the question I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
he's still alive. Unfortunately, also on Thirsty Thursday this week, I did make the claim that I wish that Texas Ranger Major Reyes was the lead character of the show.
Is that a bold claim? I don't know this person.
It's for people who like Rob Lowe, it's probably a bold claim. For everybody else,
so not a bold claim to a lot of people.
Not a bold claim.
Right. Okay, I got it. Cool. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We want to get to Bridgerton. We have so much to talk about with Queen Charlotte. Let's do some rapid fire, what we've been enjoying now that we've covered some of our main overlapping themes for the week. Yeah, I'll do one quickly and just like get it off my list. Niall Horan released a new song, Meltdown, and the marketing has been like chef's kiss for this whole album launch. And I really enjoyed the approach they took with this song. They really oriented it around the lyrics and the message of the song and like trying to show his craftsmanship. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting, it's like adding a little spice to like a big pot of soup that they're trying to make. They added a little like, ooh, like craft spice, throw that in there. Cause we've been focusing a lot on other things with him. So I'm just watching them kind of like turn the dial and like even everything out. It's interesting to watch. And we're a month out from the album releasing, right? So now you really start to see, the final, countdown of things that are happening. So it's been a little, I love watching a good rollout. Not when I have to critique, when I can just enjoy the song. Niall Horan, I can just enjoy watching it happen. It's just magical. It's wonderful. They really know what they're doing. So that's where I'm at. Alexis, rapid fire-ish. One thing you've been enjoying this week.
I ended up on 911 fridge talk for like 2 seconds because I think it only had a lifespan of 2 seconds. But damn, if it was not the greatest place to be for those 2 seconds. So in this week's episode, we kind of got this like shot of Eddie's fridge. Like he opened it, a picture fell off of it. He went to put the picture back up on the fridge, and people are like like comparing this version of the fridge to previous versions of the fridge to see like what has been added and what has been taken away from the fridge. Some besties tried to make an argument that a picture that I think is clearly Chris and Shannon hugging in front of a Christmas tree was Chris and Buck. That's fine. But what I loved about it was that it was like this moment of like hyper fixated, like hyper detailed fandom that like 6 5+1s are going to come out of, like anxiously waiting for the like 5 things that were on the fridge and 1 thing that was taken off the fridge, or like 5 times so-and-so wasn't on the fridge and 1 time they were like, I'm anxiously waiting for those fix. So it was just everything I love about fandom.
You'll have to report back next week if you're anxiously waiting. We'd like an update for next week's episode, so we can make a note of that. We'll come back to it. Sly, something you've been enjoying this week?
On the theme of sports,
it's like we're playing Jeopardy. I'll take sports for a
I'll take sports. I don't particularly care about the Knicks, but one of my favorite basketball podcasts, one of them particularly cares about the Knicks. And they made it to the second round of playoffs, which was unexpected. And so that's very exciting for that particular podcast host. And so I'm particularly excited for that particular podcast host.
Loved that. I love that. I had an interesting week with podcasts, trying to listen to them and then not being able to finish them. Like I get halfway through a podcast and then my mind would take a thought they would say and I'd run so far with it. I had to just stop the podcast entirely because I was more interested in figuring out the end of my thought than I was like finishing the conversation I was listening to. But I feel like that's a common experience with podcasts, right? And I also, I never stop thinking about content. So I listen to a podcast and I'm like, oh, could that be a video? And then I go so far down that I can't get out of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, like I said, I've been watching Shadow and Bone, getting ready for our Shadow and Bone takeover. One thing about rewatching a show so many times that like I enjoy doing this, but when it's a show that you love, it's even more enjoyable. It's like fixating on a different character every time you rewatch it. It only took me like 4 rewatches of Shadow and Bone to stop fixating on Kaz Brecker, because like that's my character right there. So I really get to focus on some of the other characters, including Jesper. And this is the first time my notes from watching have been like almost fully loaded about Jesper. So that's been really fun. He is such a fun character, and Kit Young, who plays him, is just phenomenal, like comedic talent and physical like comedy. So it was really nice to just focus on another talent from that show, because if you don't know, it's a really big ensemble and they're using this show to set up other projects they want to do in this universe. So it's kind of cool to like see what they're trying to weave together for us. I really enjoyed it. One more thing, Alexis, that you've been enjoying this week.
I will say I've been on this like mine were all aspects of TikTok because that's the only media I could consume this week. But I keep ending up on like online dating instead, like look confused in blank talk. And this week it was look confused in front of a fire station. And there were several mentions made to like hand injuries were needed, because on 911, like almost every time they've gone out with like someone that they ran into on a call, it's been a hand injury, which I just think is funny. Then there was a lot of commentary about like, no, firefighters are terrible people. And we got in this breakdown of like, no one group is a monolith. Like because a firefighter like cheated on you once doesn't mean they're like all terrible people or whatever. But I like, as someone who technically met their partner when they were on a call, I would recommend like fainting. I think fainting is the best way to go. And not just like looking confused, just like flat pass out. Because then you get to meet like multiple people and you're kind of delusional. So you get to see like how they're going to react to you at not your best. And then you're usually out long enough that there has to be some like outside of call follow-up. Like if you give me your number and I am like dead passed out on the gurney, it's not going to make any sort of difference. So that was a piece of media I enjoyed this week and my recommendation.
I love your specific expertise in this area. I think that you could do a lot to contribute to that community if you decided to jump in. One thing that I'll share with everybody watching is I feel like this would be a fun thing to bring to our community and not just limit to like the 4 hosts of the show. Anytime I see firefighters, I do send a photo to Alexis and Sly. Like anytime there's been an instance, and I live by a firehouse or like a fire hall, so I see them
And
constantly.
sometimes we get millions of pictures of Rob Lowe's face as advertising
Oh
for
yes,
a firefighter
another
show.
favorite of mine. Every time I'm back in Toronto, actually have a bunch of them from the last trip that I haven't sent you yet. I just take photos every time I see Rob Lowe. He's everywhere in downtown Toronto. It's very, very distressing.
See, that needs to be, I think certain people in our audience may appreciate if Alexis actually took photos when she saw firefighters, because Alexis doesn't. Alexis completely forgets and just explains the interaction like through
Right.
text, and everybody is like, could you just be Liz and take pictures?
I think that's better than my tactic, which is take a photo and then give no context and not respond for a little while. Which is like, why are you seeing the lovely people from the fire station, Liz? Why are you that close? Are they at your home, Liz? Hello? And then eventually I'm like, oh, no, it's fine. And everyone's fine. But I think Alexis's tactic is a bit better. It's always a little bit more in retrospect. So it's, not panic. So I think we get one more from you and then we're going to move on to Bridgerton.
Oh, man. Okay. I'll take sports for 500. I did watch 3 different games yesterday, and they were all win or die games for a one team playing. 2 out of the 3 teams, the person who needed to win to continue their series won, and 2 out of 3 of the teams that I was rooting for won. Those were not the same 2 teams, so you get to guess what I was watching and who I was rooting for. Thank you very much. And I want to say the other thing I've been enjoying this week has been an exorbitant amount of Jason Todd fanfiction. I'm doing great, I promise.
Oh, that actually reminds me of something I wanted to say so that there is like proof on the show. Like I'm saying this to the internet. If I log into the show next week and have not finished the fan fiction that I started in October, everyone has to yell at me because I need this shit to end. And I need public accountability now. So if I don't come next week and tell y'all that I finished that goddamn fanfic, please give me hell about it because it needs to end. It needs to end. So thank you, Sly, for prompting that out of me because I did want to say that tonight, and I would have, if I didn't say it tonight, honestly, I just wouldn't finish the fic next week. So I need to move on.
I really want to know what prompted
apology.
The Dios comment. Because so many things in that statement could have been the prompt for that, and I would love to know when you.
I don't know how I would ever find that knowledge out for you, but if I happen to,
No clue.
I will send that your way. Since apparently that's a thing we're doing now.
Okay, let's jump into the topic of the show. We're talking about Bridgerton tonight. I've brought the Duke Hastings with me this evening as my virtual background. And we have a lot of Bridgerton to talk about. A little bit to catch everyone up to speed. Some of us have seen the show in real time. I watched it when it first came out, as did Marissa. Some of us are catching up. Some of us still haven't finished the show. So if you have not watched Bridgerton, if you're interested in watching Queen Charlotte next week, if you just want to know a little bit more about this universe, this is a great episode for you. We're not so much digging into like the specific plots of the show. So you're not going to get everything spoiled for you, but we are going to tell you what matters heading into the show next week and our thoughts around like Bridgerton's role in like streaming and the impact it's had and kind of the culture around and within Bridgerton. So, grab a little drink. Maybe let's start with a little drink check-in for Bridgerton this evening. I really stayed on theme with Spider-Man as my cup for I have many cups that would have fit the Bridgerton theme, but I went for the Spider-Man. And I also have a pink vitamin water. So that's where I'm checking in. What about you, Alexis?
I originally had plans to break out like a whole fucking tea set and be really obnoxious.
Beautiful.
But I had no time today. So I am drinking water out of a bottle from a company we don't endorse and half a Capri Sun.
We really could have done the tea sets justice. I'm really upset. Sly, what are you checking in with tonight?
I also could have busted out a tea set, but I currently have an almost empty orange juice, a half empty ice water, and I have no clue how. Oh, Still full entire water bottle.
Oh, there's nothing better than realizing you have a fresh water when you don't think you do. That's like a little treat that I love.
Except that I feel like that realization comes with the fact that you should have had the water like multiple hours ago and forgot to drink it.
Absolutely. Where are you all checking it out? We've got an emotional support water bottle and a Red Bull. We're here to get you through the 12-hour shift. We've got Marissa at Into the Woods. I'm sure enjoying a little Into the Woods inspired soft drink or water. And we do have Marissa's thoughts on Bridgerton that we're going to play you very soon. Marissa's not totally absent from tonight's episode, and none of us have seen the video she's prepared for us. So I'm very excited to react live with all of you to Marissa's thoughts on Bridgerton. But let's start with, before we dig into like some context about this show, let's just start with a toast to some of the things that we love from Bridgerton. So I'm going to toast with my Spider-Man cup. I couldn't decide on just one thing to toast to. So I want to toast to how fun this show is, because a lot of my thoughts around Bridgerton boil down into it brings me so much joy to watch a show that is designed to bring you joy. Does that make sense? Like, it exudes joy, even if I don't agree with some of the choices or I don't like some of what's happening. It's a show that is so, like, beautiful and full of just, like, escapism and joy. So, yeah, I'd like to toast to that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Alexis, what would you like to toast to tonight, my dear?
I would like to toast to Regency era fight clubs. Not necessarily because I think they're good, but just because they exist. And just because they exist.
They exist.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. I have to say it. I can't not say it. You're going to love Shadow and Bone. Why?
Do we have a fight club moment?
Sly, what are we toasting to with Bridgerton before I just completely derail us?
I want to toast to Gretna Green references. Do we all understand the historical okay. I didn't want to like mansplain Regency era history.
I'm begging you to, actually.
I love a Gretna Green reference. So when looking at this era of England, right, there's a lot of rules and structure to marriage, right? And at that time you had to appeal to the archbishop to get a marriage license. So that was a process that took a month, right? We see this addressed throughout the show. You could appeal for like an expedited license, and those were a week. Some sketchy timeline stuff, whatever, not important. And that was standard for all of England, right? You know what place did not have that restriction? Scotland.
Oh.
You know what the closest Scottish city to London was? Gretna Green. So when, Lydia is swept off her feet by Wickham, she says they're going to run away to Gretna Green. They don't do that. They get held up in London, blah, 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 blah. Pride and Prejudice. Spoiler for Bucky, sorry. But this is a common theme. Like, if you wanted a marriage that either you couldn't get parental approval if they were under 18, or if you wanted it expedited faster than the archbishop would grant for whatever reason, you would go and get married in Gretna Green because they had way laxer marriage laws. So we got a Gretna Green reference mid-season 1, and I was ecstatic. So that's what I'm toasting.
Cheers! I love that. So my Gretna Green moment was the Wildest Dreams cover in the show. Just to be perfectly clear, that was my moment of being like, yes! That was, and I remember when that song started playing in the show, and it was during the pandemic, and it was like one of those, Bridgerton premiered in a moment of the pandemic when it was like bleak. You know what I mean? We were still in the bleak times of and I think like, especially TikTok romanticizes how like there was a lot of fun media that came out and then performed well because of the pandemic, but things were kind of bleak in the moment that Bridgerton did come out. And I just remember the joy that I felt hearing that song in this show and the way that it like lit me up. I was like, this is so good. And it's like, that's part of the reason why I love Bridgerton, because it really does, within all of what it could be better in, provides escapism. And it came and did that in a moment when people really needed that, including me. So that's part of the reasons why I love this show. It's my host history with the show. I'm loving this comment. It was Christmas, and so heartbreaking for so many people. It was such an interesting moment. And then season 2 came out, and it came out kind of, I think, in January, right? Like start of last year, or early last year anyway. And again, like thinking about bleakness, like January, February is like, those are some of the lowest rated months for mental health of like the whole year. You get the post-holiday blues, like all that kind of stuff. So again, another moment that kind of like lifted, I think, people. And now we're getting this new show kind of like in spring, which is fun. And it's going to be a little bit more serious and a little bit more topical and political. I think it's kind of the timing of this show and the message it's trying to give and the place it's trying to have. It's all very interesting with how it's been released. So I'm excited for Queen Charlotte coming this week. But I would love to hear. Go ahead.
Just talk about what my history with it has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where I'm coming from. I haven't touched Bridgerton before the past week. And then within the past week, I watched season 1, I read book 1, and then I watched season 2. I finished that earlier this morning, so I didn't get a chance to read book 2, but I kind of wish I did have time, because my trajectory of enjoyment of the property was like, season 1 was like, and then for the most part, with one notable exception, I really enjoyed the book, and then I was much more high on season 2 for like the first half-ish or whatever, and then I got really down on it again as I finished season 2. So I think if I had read the book associated with season 2, I would be coming at it a little higher, but right now I'm kind of at a meh with it. So that's my energy going into this discussion.
That's a really interesting perspective, especially because Queen Charlotte is the first Bridgerton universe property that is not based off a book.
I thought there was like a side story
there's a side story. There is, and I have it here. Hold on. In my notes, the side book is about Violet Bridgerton. And it is Violet in Bloom, and it's not a full-length novel. It is just a side story. So people are anticipating that side story is going to come inform Violet in this show. But there's not a book around the background of Queen Charlotte that's informing this, and she's like the main movement of this show. So I'm really interested.
I think there's a book coming soon.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
I'd love that. Alexis, I'd love to hear your background with the show.
You know, I don't know how to put this. I live for the random things that Liz and I really bond over. Today, that was the objectively bad hockey romance novel I was listening to that Liz got to experience. But one of the original things was Bridgerton. I hadn't watched it. I was seeing clips for it on TikTok. I can't remember how Liz sold it to me, but Liz convinced me to watch it. And I think I binged the first season in like 2 nights. And
I do want to say, because I'm hearing this in the back of my head, so I'm going to say it. I think it was Marissa that finally pushed you over the edge.
Okay, maybe it was Marissa, yeah.
And okay. I want to say that in case Marissa is watching the replay and screaming that she was the one that pushed you over the edge.
It may very well have been Marissa. I do remember Liz texting me like
we were texting warnings while you were watching it for the first time. I was very involved in the first year. Yeah.
And most trigger warnings were like, a guy is going to be shirtless in this scene. Like it was like very Alexis specific trigger warnings, which I appreciated. And I came out of it being like, oh, I know so much more about Liz as a person now because of this, season of Bridgerton. This week, I did try when I could to rewatch parts of the first season and mainly last night. And I kind of got in a slump where my first viewing had been so joyful, and even just attempting to watch it a second time, I had a lot of criticism that I didn't have the first time that I watched it. And I didn't really want that. Like I just wanted like my happy show. So I wanted like the joy that the show brought, I guess. It's not really a happy show, the joy that the show brought. So I actually only started the second season late last night. So I have only seen like an episode or two from the second season. So we'll see how that goes. But largely that is my history of the show.
No, I love that. And I think I like that our perspectives are kind of really representative of the Bridgerton experiences, right? You have the people that are book first viewers and have kind of like the context set, the people that watched in real time with literally nothing to go off of other than vibes, the people that are kind of binging and like catching up as these new shows are releasing. I'd love to know from the people that have seen Bridgerton, do you lean towards Bridgerton season 1? Or Bridgerton season 2? You can let us know in the comments, maybe without spoilers for Alexis. But for those of us on screen, I think it's interesting how different the seasons are. And I don't know, Alexis, if you really got a taste of that starting season 2, but they really are different in how they explore the romances, the side characters. Sly, do you have an opinion here?
Yes. And I think it's not a popular opinion. As I was going through season 2, I was just a little taken out of it by how blatant of a Austen ripoff it was. There were so many direct pulls of Austen references, and it didn't make me connect to the show. It made me want to revisit Austen properties instead. I wanted to turn off season 2 and just watch an Austen or reread an Austen instead of continuing that storyline, right?
Yeah.
And so that really turned me off of season 2, that it was so blatantly like referencing specific quotes, referencing specific character moments, like specific traits and specific interactions, that it didn't feel like its own property. It felt like a fan fiction of Jane Austen's canon. And I can get that other places. And season 1 and book 1, again, I haven't read the book of the Tuas, so I don't know how that compares. But season 1 stood by itself, and then when I read the book, I saw all of the things that they alluded to that was kind of left out, all of the things that kind of fleshed out those characters more, that they obviously couldn't fit into a TV show format. And so through reading the book, I think I got more of appreciation for season 1. But yeah, excluding the non-con elements of the show, which are much more explicit in the books, that whole chapter, not a fan. But yeah, for the most part, season 1, I definitely lean towards.
It's so interesting. Like, I think I lean towards them for different reasons, but I think that people's commitment to like preferring a season over the other does depend so much on what they look for in a show. And I think a lot of the Austen truthers, the people that are Jane Austen fans like you are, Sly, really disliked season 2 for that reason. And the people that didn't know a lot about Jane Austen watching it enjoyed it because they were like, wow, these moments are so great. It's like, yeah, but they're ripoffs of like the original person that wrote all of this. And I remember watching season 2 for the first time and catching and missing some of them. So I didn't have the full thread while I was watching, but I do remember the particular moments where I was like, So I almost need to like watch season 2 with you just to like, what did I miss? You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to get like the full timeline of those moments.
There's a couple of them explicitly mentioned too in my notes, and a couple just referenced. We could deep dive at a later time.
No, I would love that. I would love that. It's like a side quest for this conversation, which I would love to have. I definitely lean like to season 1, but I'll tell you why. The thing that attaches me to a show is buying into a character. Like, we all know this. I hyperfixate on a character. Like, that is what sells me on loving a show above anything else. We know, like, Shadow and Bone, Kaz Brecker. That's my character right there. Like Kanej, like that's me. That is my character. It's my moment. Like if I can't buy into someone, then it's really hard for me to like really love the show and like push it to that level for me. And when Bridgerton came out and we were introduced to Regé-Jean Page, I done. That to this day, that man gets me on the floor. Like I'm done every time he's on the screen. I think he's so phenomenal. I think he is so talented. I think he's like when they announced he was leaving Bridgerton, which is an announcement that came not that long after season 1 in relation to how long it took for us to get season 2, right? They kind of leaked it almost before they started developing season 2 on set. I remember being so happy. I think I made a TikTok about this too, like way back in the day. I was so happy that he wasn't coming back. It was the right move to like take all that buzz and capitalize on it and just leave, right? Like that was the moment. You either ruin it or you get stuck in the trope if you were to go back to it. And he said, like, leave the legacy as it was. I'm taking this and moving it on to the next thing. Like, you couldn't even be mad. Like, it was so smart. So he got my respect for making that move. He got my respect for the performance that he did. I was rewatching a little bit of season 1 for today's episode earlier today. And I was just reminded, like, of all the little things that he brings to his character, his physicality, his face. Like he does leading man face so well. Like he should do a masterclass on it. And that's something I did miss a little bit in season 2 from some of the side characters that they were trying to elevate, like Colin coming in for season 3. Like there were moments where I was like, God damn it, couldn't you just go to the Regé-Jean Page masterclass on how to do face and just like learn a little bit from him? Like I think he's brilliant. So that's why I lean into season 1. But other than those things in our history about loving the show, let's dig into a little bit more specific things that are our roses and thorns about Bridgerton. And have we ever had a more aptly named segment for a show we're talking about roses and thorns? I feel like there's so much to say here. I'll start with Regé-Jean Page as one of my roses of the show. Alexis, do you have a rose?
I do, but I think I'm going to have to like verbally explain it.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Well, you go first. Aren't you going first?
That kind of was my point, the Regé-Jean Page. Oh. But we'll just take that.
I think that's fine. Okay.
Tie right in.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm with you now. My rose, I've seen it in the parts of season 2 that I've watched it. It was in season 1 quite a bit. But is this kind of like intelligent, like witty banter where there's like a lot of like stubbornness. There's some like good puns made, like just that kind of dialogue as one of my roses for the show.
That's so valid. I think that it towed the line really well of doing Regency like humor, but then also kind of like giving it a flavor for like the 2020s audience. Sly, one of your roses.
For sure, it has to be the orchestral arrangements of modern songs. I don't always pick up on the auditory cues, but musically, I'm usually able to catch themes that I know pretty easily, and so I didn't realize it until the Wildest Dreams needle drop, and I went, "Oh, wait, is this what they're doing?" And then from then on, I was paying a little bit more attention to like the captions every time they would do that. And I just think it was so well done and a great example that we'll talk about a little bit later about the intentional anachronistic elements of the show.
I love it. There's so many roses with this show. I think I need to just like park my roses there. We can get stuck in this segment all night. Let's talk about some thorns with this show. I could not think of one other than some of the obvious things that are wrong with this show. I think I need to just save my thoughts till we talk about the inaccuracies of the show, because I think that one of the things that I appreciate about Shondaland as a production company is that they put out season 1 and then kind of went like, we know it wasn't right. And I thought that was like a really interesting thing. Like there was a lot of issues with season 1 and people not like liking how they did not flesh out like the race of it all and like the Queen Charlotte and the backstory, and people wanted like they felt like people were rushing over it and the writing could have done it more justice. And then Shondaland was kind of like, we understand what we put out. Just trust us. We're going to like continue to build the universe and like kind of expand on it. So even like the thorns to me of like the conversations that have been really critical around like race and sexuality and characters having like those vague veiled conversations where they could have used like more specific language to talk about things, and instead we have to kind of infer, are they talking about being queer, are they talking about this, are they talking about that? I feel like Shondaland as a production company is like now taking us down this road with Queen Charlotte where they are going to be political and kind of explain the universe to us and kind of all these big questions that we have. So I'm hesitant to really put my thorns out there because I want to be hopeful that Queen Charlotte's actually giving space for the conversations to be had. We will see. We will see. So I'll just kind of like give a little thorn there. Alexis, do you have a thorn?
I have a serious thorn and I have a less serious one. So we're going to go with the less serious one because I think you're going to kind of get some of that later. Alexis watched X-Files. Well, I started watching X-Files when I was 2 years old because my aunt was watching it. But I really watched it for the first time all the way through when I was like 12. And for any X-Files fans out there, bees are a big deal. Bees kill us. Bees bring in the alien revolution. Like bees result in like being trapped in the ice and rescued by our lover only for it to be retconned the next season. Like they're filled with smallpox, like bees are a disaster. And it did cultivate this fear in me, this like deadly fear of bees. When I was a lifeguard, that was like I wasn't afraid of like having to rescue somebody. I was afraid that I was going to get stung by a bee. So the role that like bees have, played in this show, that would be the thorn to me, just because I can't with the bees.
I do have a very, very vivid memory of watching season 2 for the first time when all the episodes came out, and Marissa was watching at the same time. And I think this is where my memory is foggy because my memory is shit. I think Marissa was ahead of me, and I got to the bee sequence, and I was like, bees? I was like, this is the stakes this is built off of? And we had a bit of a moment being like, what? So Marissa's going to have to fill in the gaps on that if she remembers it, because I do remember
I have to pull a direct quote from my notes in this moment.
Please.
I did write, I'm pulling 2 bullet points. The first one was, ouch, bee emoji, and then broken heart. You get to know, what that this is referring to. Yeah. And then my next point was, I am also traumatized by someone being allergic to bees and panic at the sight of them, I feel so seen.
I will say that this is kind of, I don't want to say that it's rare for me. The bees thing is not rare, but I did mention in a conversation, I think fairly recently, that I'm a sucker for any sort of romance, whether it be like a romance novel or like a fanfic that has an allergy storyline, like blank is allergic to blank. And somebody on this show may or may not have read me to filth for that. But the bee situation is surprising in that way, because usually I would be all for like any sort of allergy related romance story.
Right. And I do want to pull up this comment. I would love to see how it was in text slide. Do you have any commentary on that?
I didn't read that book.
Okay.
I will let you know when I get to it. I guarantee that comment is accurate, and it is much more stressful and much more higher stakes in writing compared to how it was represented in the show.
I think it would have been interesting if they had found a different plot device. You know what I mean? It's like, of all the things to be book accurate about, you decided to really lean into the bees. Like, I really feel like we could have had the same growth pattern with anything else. And I remember it kind of made me chuckle because it was like, you couldn't have those stakes in a 2023 romance story. Because we, like you could, it could be very 911, like a disaster call 911 about it. But like, you can get to the hospital and you can get medicine in a very timely way that could save you from such an incident with a bee. I'm going to knock on wood when I say that, because I hope that that's the case, and I'm not lying on the internet about this. But to me, it was like, I remember watching it and being like, is this like a Regency era style problem? Like the bees are that threatening to people? Like, and like it was.
I mean, yeah, it was. They're in the countryside. They're in the middle of nowhere. The nearest doctor is probably at least a decent amount of hours right away. Like, it is a serious problem. Is that how fast bee allergies will unalive somebody? No. Are there things they could have done to maybe tamp down those symptoms until a doctor arrived? Sure. But I understand wanting to be like accurate to the character development.
Wanting to be accurate.
Correct. Yeah. I think it probably serves the story much more in the written form. And I totally get what you're saying, Liz. This does not hit in a post-pandemic world. It does not hit in a modern context. It does not hit
Wait, hold on. That's a really interesting thought. Did that storyline not land for people, me, because we were in a health crisis?
Probably.
That is a smart thought, Sly. That is an interesting perspective on this. Yeah, if they had maybe stayed away from the health storyline entirely and just found another set of stakes that weren't like we're all like bees, try COVID-21, like all the new strains coming out. Like I'm like, I don't give a fuck about a bee right now. Like it's gonna be fine.
I, for one, am sad that Sly applied logic to that situation and that the actual answer is not that everyone in the world is suffering from my X-Files related trauma, because I thought that's where we were all at.
I love this show because we give you every side of the spectrum of where you can chime in on a topic like this, right? We do have to acknowledge that the bee thing was so sexual, which I think also really polarizes audiences. And on this show, that's always something that we give a wide range of perspectives on. Was a moment actually sexual? Did someone have to text someone for clarification that something was meant to be sexual, or was it weird? And that was a moment when I texted Marissa and said, what was that? And Marissa's like, I think he was supposed to be sexual. And I had to say, And then I think we started a chain of reactions around our group as people were watching at various times to have such conversations. So definitely you could almost do a game of all of the sexual Bridgerton moments and almost sexual moments to be like, where does this fit on the spectrum of what they were trying to tell us was sexy?
I will say, typically that person is me. And recently, Liz was subjected to 911 Lone Star so that she could explain to me whether or not a scene was actually supposed to be sexual, which I appreciate.
But one of my favorite things about Alexis isn't giving y'all the full story. Alexis will say, what do you think of this situation, right? And then send the most bizarre thing you've ever seen in your life. And it's like, Alexis, this isn't a you thing specifically. This is like bad writing, bad acting. Like this is not an obscenely clear situation. I had to watch that 3 times before I texted you back. Like that's where I come in on these topics. It's not like Alexis is sending like, I burn for you. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's hot. That's hot. Like it's always gray zone. It's always gray zone. So I love that. Okay. Put that to the side. Sly, it's time for you to share your thorn with this show.
I already mentioned the Austin ripoffs. But my first thorn, before I even started watching a single episode of this show, I was just looking at the length of the series to see, how long it would take me to get through. It's a lot of content for 1 week. And as I was looking, I looked at that nifty little episode length marker and saw that there was 3 multiple episodes that came in at a 72 or in the 70s runtime. Yep. And I said, that is not a TV show. That is a movie. That could have been a tight 90, and you could have told a way more comprehensive story. So the length of the episodes whoever decided that 70 minutes was an acceptable runtime for a single episode of television, I have beef with. I want to fight. I will fight on site. And I'm just saying that this very much could have been like a 4 to 6 part 90-minute-ish mini series type vibe, and I think that would have fixed some of my issues. Especially with season 2, I felt like the pacing was really inconsistent. Season 1, I think the pacing was excellent, but season 2, it was a little all over the place for me. But yeah, no, I had a strong issue with the 72-minute runtime.
So I'm going to agree and disagree with you on some of the things you've said here. So I agree with the pacing points, right? I think that to me, in my viewing experience, the pacing is what makes the episodes feel long or short with anything I'm watching. There have been episodes of The Mandalorian that I'm like, let's leave Tatooine. Like, I'm like, let's get out of here. Like, I am like, I mean, not necessarily Tatooine, but I'm like, we got to go. Like, let's just, like, the pacing drives me mad in that show. It picks up and it's really quick, and then it feels like the slowest episode you've ever seen. And then, like, that's one of the reasons why I don't talk about The Mandalorian on the show, because I have a lot of opinions on the pacing. The length of season 1 episodes, to me, was so great because of the moment it came out in, right? Like, we're all at home. No one's leaving your home except to buy groceries and go for your mental health walk. Like, you can't do anything. So, like, what a great show to have available to you to take up your day when you have nothing else to do, right? And then season 2 came out, and I do remember feeling like the pacing was like all over the place. And like, I was like, of all the things you did well in season 1, you nailed the pacing. So how did that like get missed a little bit in how you wrote season 2? And to me, that's what made some of those longer episodes feel like long. But I generally I do enjoy watching a show that's got like ridiculously long run times. So I am with the audience here. Like, when I saw the 72-minute episodes, I was like, yes, like, don't hold back the scenes we need to see. Like, I hate when you're watching a show and you can just tell they were trying to squeeze it under like the 50-minute mark, and you're like, God, there's probably like 5 things they cut that would have added to this. Like, I would have liked to have seen that. I don't really feel like there's a lot of
I will say, yeah, I had no problem with most of season 1. I think season 1 only had the finale over that 60-ish minute, right?
Yep.
I have no problem with them filling out a full hour. I totally agree with you on the point of like network television trying to hit 42 minutes. You can definitely feel things are cut. I totally get flushing out all the time you have available to you, especially on a streamer platform. It's just something in my brain when you get when you get to 70 minutes, that's a kid's movie. Like, that is, you have to structure it to support that long of a runtime.
That's very, very valid. Very valid. Alexis, where do you come in on that?
I don't really think I noticed in the first season, which to me means it was like, for me personally, it was fine. But I did binge it. So my intent going in was, I'm going to consume 6 hours of content today. It didn't really matter as much to me, like, where that content started and ended. Yeah. Whereas like in previous Marvel properties that we've discussed on here, where I'm watching them week to week, it really matters to me, like the length of the episode and where it starts and where it ends and like what is included. So I guess I don't necessarily contribute it to COVID so much as I contribute it to like the way in which I chose to watch the show.
Here's a question that I wanted to ask you guys.
Go ahead. It did drop as Netflix does all at once, right? It was made with the knowledge that it would be binged. So that makes sense. Yeah.
I do feel like this is one of Netflix's better bingeable original properties. Like, there's not a moment really where you're like, especially in season 1, where I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop watching here. They always leave you in a place that's like, oh yeah, what's next? Like, even the episodes that do have like a nice kind of clean ending where you could put it away, I'm like, no, I want to see them kiss. I shall keep going. Like, Okay, with that said, let's dive into Bridgerton a little bit more and talk about the Bridgerton universe so that we can zoom out and talk about Queen Charlotte. And Sly, I want to hand it to you because I think this is a really interesting conversation and I want you to lead us through it. So, breaking down Bridgerton. Point 1.
Yeah, for sure. One piece of conversation that I'd seen surrounding Bridgerton before I even touched the property was its intentional use of anachronistic elements as a piece of storytelling. This was a big conversation around especially period pieces and how they use that as a device to engage modern audiences. And this is the first example uh, that I've really seen of a massively popular property that openly admits to using purposeful anachronistic elements and doing so successfully. All three of those elements, right? And so my question to you all is, how has that use influenced the future of period pieces and adaptations of classics? Like, using those elements as a device to draw in modern audiences. This is a great example of it succeeding, but where do we see it failing? One example I would like to directly compare this to is Netflix's Persuasion that came out last year. It also had very heavy use of modern language and modern anachronisms to attempt to engage a modern audience, and it fell short in that huge Austen fans didn't like it and modern audiences didn't care enough to watch it. So all of those elements kind of came off as, I don't use this as a disparaging way, but as a descriptor, it came off as cringy, right? Because it didn't match the audience it was intending to engage. And so I was just curious if you guys have seen any period pieces that have come out or have been in development since Bridgerton, at least season 1. Where are you seeing that? How are you feeling about what that future looks like in general?
One movie that I've talked about a lot on this show, and I'm so mad this movie never got its moment in the spotlight. So I feel like I'm just constantly trying to put the spotlight on it. Emily, which is the story of Emily Bronte, is a movie that was in development, I think probably in the same timing as Bridgerton. This took forever to develop, let alone get to the point of filming. So I don't think it's a movie that had been impacted by Bridgerton, other than maybe people being really interested in Regency pieces that wouldn't have been before. But it is not a film that you could compare to Persuasion or Bridgerton. The tone is a 180. The color grading, a 180. The use of elements from thriller and horror is in your face jarring. It's one of my favorite films. I saw it at TIFF, and it just was to see it in a theater was extraordinary, even though it's not what you would think of a movie that you would want to see in a theater. It really spoke to me in that setting and that audio experience. And I think that it is an interesting example of a movie that took elements that you wouldn't expect in a time period piece from the technical perspective and ran 10 million miles with it. Kind of in the same way that Little Women did. There are elements of the way they filmed Little Women that is so beautiful and really endearing, but it's very modern in how they approached it. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. And my mind keeps going to the costuming in that movie and how the costuming from Bridgerton is something that's so jarring to people. And I found the costuming in Emily was very jarring to me. So I think that's one of the only comparison points I would give them is they took some elements that can be so hit and miss and can really change an audience's thought on the accuracy of the time period, or I'm struggling to find the word I'm looking for, how rooted it really is in the time it's trying to represent, the authenticity is what I'm trying to think of, the authenticity of the time period, and kind of went okay, yes, but like let's focus more on making things that match the tone and the character and the message than like being like 10 million trillion% like in the moment. I don't think that's a bad thing.
And that's 100%. When we look at what makes a good adaptation, right? It is taking the elements of the original story, the classic, right? And adapting it for the audience of that time. So every adaptation is going to have different influences because it's made by people who are in different cultural timepieces, right? And so like the strength of a good adaptation is how does it apply those themes of a story and root it in language, and I'm using that broadly, whether it's visual, like costuming, color grading, textual, whatever language you're talking about, to the audience it's trying to reach. That's so interesting, especially with you were talking about Bronte and the like horror aspects, like really leading into like the gothic elements of those novels. That's so fascinating to me.
Like gothic in a field. Like that was something to me that was like so cool. Like literally a green hill, but it feels like a gothic thriller. It's like it was so impressive to me. I was like, damn, like they did really hard things in that film really well, which is part of the reason why I wanted the internet to have discourse around. I wanted people to disagree with that film, and I didn't see it. So anyway, recommend it. Alexis, do you have an example that you want to share or anything?
I don't know that I necessarily have an example, but I do have thoughts. When I consume television or watch media and try to decide like what I liked and didn't like about the property and why, a lot of times I think about it from this scope of like how they felt about their relationship with the audience and what they thought their audience was going to be, and like how they embraced or didn't embrace or wrote to or wrote away from that audience, right? And, you know, there's a writer's commentary from like years and years ago with John Rogers, who was talking about like, we learned pretty early on that like we had a pretty intelligent audience watching the show. They were going to have discourse about certain things. And so that really shaped how we wrote the show. We knew what we needed to over-explain and what we needed to just let the audience have a conversation about, right? And I think something that Bridgerton did really well that I hope was intentional was kind of trust that their audience would have a conversation about the anachronisms in the show and how they worked, right? I think there are a fair amount of viewers of that show like me who came from a background where anachronism was not okay, that was, you know, bad, pooey, and that when you watched any Regency era piece or any time periods at piece, you're kind of looking for the anachronisms first, right? And I remember seeing that conversation about Bridgerton happen on TikTok, right? Where we went from like anachronism bad to some anachronism good to this is how the anachronisms are used to tell the story. So I think they largely succeeded there because of that. When I look at shows like Nettflix adaptations of certain other Regency pieces, it feels not like they were doing it out of an understanding of their audience, but as part of a fad. And I know there are, like, I've come across several community style theaters like across the US who are now trying to do like Pride and Prejudice on stage with these like anachronisms, not because they want to like have that discourse, but because it is quote unquote a fad. So I feel like when it is treated that way, that it largely fails because like Sly said, it feels cringy. Like it feels like you're not really understanding what the purpose of this was. But when it is done more intentionally with the room for conversation, like in Bridgerton, or like it seems like what you're describing, Liz, and Bronte, that like it does succeed really well. So I guess that would be my stance on it, as it were.
Theater is such an interesting medium to like bridge into the conversation. Oh my God, can we go there for a second? I want to, okay, just really quickly. I
need 3 to 5 business days to recover from that pun.
The puns are really like coming to me tonight. I feel like I'm really channeling them. So there's a theater company where I live, Shakespeare by the Sea, and it's Shakespeare in the Park kind of thing. And they always, every season, bridge pop culture modern pop culture into their shows. And I'll never forget in 2012, 2013, like Deathly Hallows Part 2 had like was just coming off the cuff-tails of finishing kind of thing, and like Hunger Games era, whatever. And I remember we saw Comedy of Errors, and they managed to successfully do like a Twilight Who Are You thing and a Harry Potter spell joke. And it was like, wow, like it just audience ate it up, right? And like there were many other pop culture moments, but those are the ones that I like remember from the show. And like those things are so successful in the theater medium, and they're so hard to translate to like the silver screen, right? Like it's so hard to like, if they made a Harry Potter reference in Bridgerton, that we would roast them forever over it. Like that would never in a million trillion, for many reasons, but it would never fly, right? So yeah, it's interesting to think about like this topic, but how it specifically affects streaming shows, right? And how people, if you're going to go to your local community theater and you're going to, you know, look for the inaccuracies and the costuming and things, people are probably going to call you an asshole, right? Like it's community theater, like chill out. Like they probably someone with a very low budget did their best, but we can have those critiques about Shondaland because it's like how your budget was huge and you had access to so much time and experts to make this happen, and you still chose to do X, Y, Z, which I think is interesting.
I think in theater too, at least in my experience, there is a certain amount of like gravitas placed on historical accuracy. I did a production of Pride and Prejudice. It was our state premiere, and we were originally in historically accurate costumes, like painfully sewn to be as historically accurate as possible. And they were terrible. They read poorly. Like they were just, because they looked historically accurate, they did not look romantic, right? And like a stage production of Pride and Prejudice is largely about like the romance in that story. And so the choice was made to change the dress I wore to be an almost identical replica of Keira Knightley's. Because even though that dress was not necessarily as historically accurate as some of the pieces that we had been in, that was a much more romantic dress, and it read as more romantic, to the audience, right?
Interesting.
But there was a big like creative debate about it because that wasn't historically accurate, and people like the show wouldn't have the same level of gravitas in our 300-seater community theater if it was more comfortable for me to wear, right? But I do, agree, Liz, that I think theater does have a certain ability to kind of integrate those pop culture references in a way that maybe not everything does. I know in the book that I was listening to today, like I was messaging you, like we are now in an entire chapter about Harry Potter world, and it feels so disconnected and disjointed. Like it doesn't feel like something the author actually understands. Whereas like if a group of like Shakespearean actors by the sea in Canada make a Harry Potter reference, I'm like, yeah, they probably still have it in their backpack in the dressing room. Like that, I buy that that's an authentic thing.
And I think that plays into the idea of how theaters developed, because the idea of regional theater especially is you get this text and every single person is going to put on a different production of this text. Depends on your actors, depends on your director, depends on your set designer. Like everybody's going to have a different interpretation of the text. And we see that on a much higher level with adaptations for TV and film, right? People are adapting texts, but in a way that's held to such a higher standard, because when you go to a community theater, you are expecting community theater. You are not expecting a Hollywood movie, right? And I think theater is such an interesting place that because you go in expecting a new and fresh take on a play, no matter how many times you've seen it, you can see the same play with 100 different theaters and it's going to be different every single time because you go in with that expectation. I think the reception to making those choices is very different.
This, I'm going to assume, is a perfect transition to what Marissa wants to talk about in her video that we have not watched, because she has prepared for us a video on the hair of Bridgerton, which I can only assume talks about historical accuracy and inaccuracy. Would anybody else like to make a bet around what Marissa talks about in this video?
I am really excited because one of my notes was, I know at the time I watched this, Marissa said something about blank, and I don't remember what she said. And I'm thinking based on this PowerPoint screen that she will address it in this video.
I bet that she will say at one point something about something being like, she'll be like, is this good? No, but I like it anyways. Something along
That's
those
really
lines.
strong. That's really strong. If anybody else wants to throw what they think is about to happen in this video in the comments now, like we can play a little Marissa gives a rant bingo. I'm gonna mute my mic and hit play. And if y'all can't hear it, can you yell or something? Just alert me. And if people watching can't hear the audio as well, you let me know. Let's see what Marissa has to say about the hair of Bridgerton.
I can't hear it.
Okay, hold on. We shall read. I don't know why when you share on here, it doesn't take the audio. That's like quite frustrating. Okay, what about now?
Hi, it's me, Marissa.
Is it okay? Okay. Here we go. Let's see what Marissa has to say.
I'm not with you, but I just really didn't want to talk about Bridgerton. Obviously, that's not true. I'm devastated to not be there. But I'm here virtually in this little bubble to talk to you about the hair of Bridgerton because it's something I feel very strongly about. And
just, it's really important that we mention that the original cut of this video was 10 minutes long. So to our earlier point about wanting to see the deleted scenes, I am going to be requesting a full 10-minute cut of this rant at some point from Marissa. And if you would like to hear that as well, you should bombard us at After Party Show on Instagram and Twitter and let Marissa know. Okay, just wanted to state that for the record. Let's continue.
My opinion could not go unacknowledged. So, first up, Bridgerton is a 2-time Emmy-winning hair team. They have won for 2021 and 2022, seasons 1 and 2. Famously, 2021, they beat WandaVision, which was devastating for me, but Bridgerton was the only show I would allow to happen instead. So, let's celebrate the hair design on this show because look at the wigs. They're incredible, especially Queen Charlotte. I believe she doesn't wear the same wig twice, but I have done no research, so I could be wrong. It's just like the most crazy, bonkers, incredible things you've ever seen. Like, obviously, these are award-winning. Duh. Obviously, Queen Charlotte's always wearing a wig. That's the point. It's supposed to be a wig. It's supposed to look like a wig. But Lady Danbury's also always wearing a wig, and so is Penelope. However, it's all wigs. Even the hair that you think, I don't think that's a wig. That looks like someone's hair. No, it's a wig. That's a wig. And that's a wig. And that's a wig. Bridgerton is not really full wigs most of the time. The way that they do it is like a half wig sort of situation, but it's sort of a reverse of what you would expect. Typically, in a half wig, you would keep the natural hairline and add more in the back, which they do add more in the back, but they have a false hairline. Because a lot of the like business and the shaping of the styles happens in the front, they use a false lace hairline that goes from, ear flap to ear flap and to the crown of your head, and then a like false bun piece to create all of those updos. The back of the hair, though, like the nape of the neck, is natural. It's like this, and then fake and fake, which is just cool and fun and weird and not something that you see very often. But if you think about it, it's very practical because it saves time and money because you can have all of these intricate designs pre-styled, but you're not paying for full lace wigs that go all the way around the head and are like twice as expensive and twice as much effort and work to apply. So it's pretty cool. Here's another example. You can see the natural hair in the nape of the neck and that whole false top piece. It's very impressive. The Featheringtons are the most obvious example of this because they have fake hair, like fake colored hair. None of the Featheringtons are actually redheads. So because the nape of the neck is their natural hair, all of that fake stuff in the front that's pre-styled is red and beautiful. And then the like back 3 or 4 inches of their hair is just brown. And they don't really try to cover it, which is interesting. But they keep winning Emmys. So that front lace piece is one version of it. Or they also sometimes do the more typical like fall situation where you have like the first few inches of natural hair out in the front and then a piece that's clipped on top that sort of covers the rest of the head. So here it's like 2 inches of natural hair and then all of that braid part. So it's all wigs. Even the wigs that you think aren't wigs are wigs. And it's really impressive and very fun and cool, but also like entirely anachronistic. Like none of this hair is really accurate to the period. Some of them are inspired by the era, but it's a lot of extravagance and fantastical business, which is Bridgerton. It's not supposed to be based in reality. It's supposed to be a fantasy. So it works, which is cool. It's just not real in any sense. Okay, thanks, bye.
Yay, Marissa. That was so fun.
Such a hard cut out, bestie.
Only Marissa would end a video like in such a, self-deprecating kind of way. I'm obsessed.
I love the freeze frame and then the oh god, what's it called? When you record voice after it's not done naturally
like a voiceover.
ADR?
Thank you. ADR was the acronym I was looking for. Thank you.
I got you.
I never noticed any of what she's talking about. And now that she has pointed it out, I need to rewatch the entire show. Like that is so interesting. And like hold on, I'm just gonna go back in the video here. Like this, that was like jaw-dropping to me. I was like looking at my screen that the video's on. I was like, what?
I also love a Marissa burn that's like, I don't know why they do it that way, but they keep winning Emmys.
Can we get a round of tacos in the chat from Marissa contributing some virtual discourse tonight? Let's review some of the comments that Marissa makes. We are sure Marissa sees them in the replay. I'm learning so much tonight. We love teaching. It's one of our favorite things. That was a beautiful PowerPoint. Holy crap. Really, Marissa goes the extra mile. If this show does one thing right, it is the ability to produce a state-of-the-art PowerPoint. It is a Will Go the After Party specialty. Although I would say of the PowerPoints we've had on this show, the dino slides are still in the number 1 slot. This can be like a number 2 slide deck. I think that's fair. Yeah. Amazing. The behind the scenes videos of Bridgerton are great and you learn a lot. Yes, we should do a deep dive. Maybe Marissa can do a deep dive for us as well and tell us if they've added anything about hair. I'm sure they will. And I'm excited to see the Queen Charlotte deep dives. Okay, we're in the last 20 minutes of the show and we still have so much more to talk about, but it's okay. I want to kind of take this conversation in a very similar vein and talk a little bit about a new phenomena that's been dubbed Instagram face. Have y'all heard about Instagram face? Okay, I'm so excited to see if people have been seeing this on their For You page. People have started talking about this. I really saw it come to light. I think the first time I ever heard the term was with Persuasion and Dakota Johnson. And there was this post that went like mega viral. And I think it might have been a tweet, but someone said they did not buy Persuasion because Dakota Johnson looks like someone that is on Instagram. That was the joke. And it was like, wait, that explains a whole bunch of things of why modern pieces, modern created time period pieces is what I'm trying to say, maybe aren't working because they're casting people that know what they look like on Instagram versus even 10 years ago, we weren't as involved in our self-image with social media. Like when it was just Facebook or just like, you know what I mean? Like in the past, in the 2000s, it's really taken on a life of its own. And there was also a lot of conversation around this with Daisy Jones and the Six, because there was this comment like, you're going to do this show about rock music in the 70s and the 60s, and everyone has perfect skin, perfect teeth, perfect hair. And it doesn't match when you look at the bands of that time period. They were not as aesthetically put together. Like the rock music of the time had like big costuming, big outfits, big hair, big moments, but it was not like veneers, you know? So I thought that was like so interesting to think about in the context of this show. So my question to the group and to everybody watching, does Bridgerton sell it or suffer from it? Sly, I know you have some thoughts. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I think it depends on your audience, right? It depends on who you're marketing it to. Bridgerton was going for a fantastical, anachronistic, romantic, pretty storytelling. And so arguably it does work. They're all very put together, they're all very thin, they're all very up to modern beauty standards. And it works. And we know it works because the show was wildly successful. Does it hit for me? Not particularly, especially looking at what would be the upper echelon of society at that time. Besides like a little bit of mention we get in season 2 with Cullen being too tan, right? We don't really talk about it. But at that time, if you were that wealthy, you were not that skinny because it makes you look poor, right? You are ghastly pale if you can get away with it. And you know, the way you're presenting yourself to the world is grounded in such a different society than we have now. And so like little mannerisms and the way makeup is done to enhance different features and those kind of details can sometimes pull you out of it a little bit when you're trying to think of this being a story grounded in a specific time period. But when that's not what you're going for, I think it really depends on your audience. And I think Bridgerton, we can arguably say, is wildly successful for, not fitting into that beauty standards of the time because that's not what they were going for.
Well said. Round of tacos for Sly. I think you just covered that excellently. I agree with everything you just said. Absolutely. Let's bring up this point coming in from the comments about the characters. This is something that, again, I'm getting like the voice of Marissa in the back of my head. I need to say it. One example of a character in Bridgerton that has a transformation that to me takes him from selling it to suffering from it is Anthony Bridgerton. And in season 2, he comes back in those sideburns that are atrocious. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm just dying because one of my first notes of season 2 was I kind of miss the sideburns, not gonna lie.
Like, as ghastly as they were iconic of him in season 1.
So iconic.
Like, it really was.
It was so ridiculous. It brought me so much joy. And then now that he's your like leading character or whatever, you have to make him more like conventionally attractive or whatever. I vehemently disliked it. I miss the sideburns. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
So, on a personal level, I was thrilled they were gone. Like, just in terms of me having to look at his face for like the 10 hours of the show or whatever the total runtime is. Like, I was like, on a personal level, I was thrilled that they were gone. Alexis is agreeing. So I see what they were doing there. Like, people are not going to buy into him as a romantic lead if like these ghastly sideburns are still there. And I see Leah agreeing with me in the comments. Yeah, we were happy the sideburns were gone. However, I loved
the sideburns.
I loved the sideburns for the purpose they served in season 1 and how like, again, they kind of are fantastical in their own way. And the thing about it is that to me, it was paired with the infamous One Direction swoop. Like, you could copy and paste Anthony Bridgerton season 2 hair onto any member of One Direction and be like, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I feel like Marissa's gonna yell at me for saying that because it was like much better than some of the One Direction hair. But it was more the point of it was like, okay, the whole point of this man, right? He's trying to sell me that he's gonna perform his duty and just pick a wife. And you're gonna shave the ghastly sideburns. Like, to me, if you don't want all the ladies of the ton to fall in love with you, you just let them grow, my guy. Like, don't make yourself more like conventionally attractive to sell me that you're not supposed to. Like, why didn't they do that halfway through the season once he's like starting to fall in love?
Well, okay, I have two problems with it. One was in season 1, they were very much within like the fashion of the time-ish, right? Everything's like kind of ish. I can go on a whole rant about what is technically Regency. We don't have to do that here. But my problem with it is that they were gone before the shaving scene with the brothers. Like, we got the like makeover scene with all the brothers at the barber or whatever, but we were already missing the sideburns before that moment. And so if you were trying to sell it to me as like new year, new me, character transformation, I'm taking on this season, I'm finding myself a wife moment, I would have bought it. But because we already got an establishing shot of him without the sideburns before that like shaving scene or whatever, it's just a little disappointing.
I would have loved the sideburns to have been a caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly moment for it. I would have loved if all of a sudden he comes in episode, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something, and he comes onto the screen and it's just what we see in episode 1. Like, I would have loved it. I think they were more worried about the aesthetic of selling season 2 from the get-go and making us want to see this conventionally attractive man fall in love than us, like, hardcore Bridgerton fans that would have stayed with them until that moment. Alexis, where do you come in on the sideburns?
Well, right now I'm envisioning the sideburns with 2 googly eyes, like a giant caterpillar. Like, just like the old, like the terrible, like dollar store sideburns that you would like stick on your face. That's with googly eyes is what I'm imagining. But no, I totally, on a broader note, I totally agree with Sly, right? I think it has a lot to do with your audience and what you're intending to do with the show. I will say that we, on the after party a lot, talk about various aspects of Hollywood being like 5 to 10 years behind the curve, right? And I think what is so interesting about this conversation is what people are kind of actually saying, right? Is that these people do not fit this time period. We don't believe that they are of the period that you were trying to sell us on, because they are made to be almost robotically conventionally attractive, right? And I think some of the sub-commentary is for decades, Hollywood has gate-kept anyone who is not conventionally attractive from being involved in the industry in such a way that this has like continued to culminate, right? So now we're at a time where people are saying, well, that's not what we want. Like, we want people to look like the way they do in that time, to be less conventionally attractive. And I don't really think Hollywood is in a place to be able to course correct to that, right? Because it has been so important for so long to Hollywood, not to me as a viewer or you as a viewer, but to Hollywood, that people meet this like made up aesthetic ideal, whether they're in a time period piece or not.
Well said. Well said. I did, as you were saying that, I did have the thought that, like, for people that haven't seen the show, it might be helpful to see exactly what we've been referencing in this conversation. So I've just taken the liberty really quick of Googling Anthony Bridgerton so we can just give a visual. Here's season 1. See? The fantastical sideburns we speak of that could very easily have googly eyes.
Indeed.
And then this is the transformation that we get in season 2, which is wildly different.
It's a choice.
It's oh, here, look at this. We can go from here. Yeah. It's a different man. It's a different man. So just, I wanted to put that on the screen for those that do not have the exact context on that. Okay, I'm looking at the time. Let's speed through a little bit more of what we wanted to talk about tonight. So I wanted to do some rapid fires from our notes, but maybe we'll end the show on that note so we can just continue our conversation and talk a little bit about Queen Charlotte, which is coming this Thursday to Netflix. So let's just share a little bit of context about what the embargo has said. The embargo lifted, and it was really a moment on Twitter where a lot of reviewers were like, on the moment they could say something talking about how much they loved the show. Like, there's a lot of love for this show, which I thought was interesting, especially for a Bridgerton property. It's usually not what we get out the gate. But here's the context that we have on what's coming. This is the origin story of Violet Bridgerton and Lady Danbury. Netflix says it is centered on Queen Charlotte's rise to prominence and power. It tells the story of a young queen's marriage to King George, sparked both a great love story and a societal shift, creating the world as we know it in Bridgerton. There's no book that this is based off of. There is the novella Violet in Bloom, which we could see weaved in, but this is all in all a very original writing. Like, Queen Charlotte's backstory does not exist in the book universe, which means most of us should be coming into this with like a really uncontextualized experience. This is a brand new Bridgerton story.
And this is, I was looking at it earlier because I was like, I could have sworn I saw a book. So the show comes out next week, and then on the 9th, I think it was, they're releasing a full book called Queen Charlotte that I think was like written in tandem or whatever. So there is a book. It doesn't exist yet. That's why I was confused.
Well, if you want to read the book first, you just got to wait a little bit and try not to get spoiled, and then read the book and backtrack and watch the show, which I love for the people that prefer that route. Okay, the reviews for this show are where things get really interesting. I went down the rabbit hole earlier. The logline that people used: sad, sexy, and serious. Those seem to be the three main points of this show. There's kind of three main themes that really can set us up for what to expect from here. Theme one is it's gayer. They explore explicit queerness in this show, which really feeds into this idea, point two, that it is the most political thing we've seen from Bridgerton. We get the queer storyline, although there was some debate around like if they really did a queer story justice, or like, you know, hard to understand what the reviews mean without knowing the text they're speaking to. But it's been called the most queer season, or the most explicitly queer moments from the Bridgerton universe. However, do they get it across the finish line? We shall see. The most political season yet. They use the marriage of George and Charlotte to really answer the questions that we've been getting from season 1 and 2 around race in this universe, and like, how can they just have these moments because it's not historically accurate. And they really
one line in season 1, something about like, it's basically they were alluding to the idea that people of color were only considered people because the king fell in love with one of them, which was a choice. But like, we got like that one line, and
that is really the line that they built this show off of. And some of the reviews really spoiled it, so I'm not going to spoil any of it for people that want no spoilers, but that is the exact thing that they seem to have built this love story off of, and the pressure that it puts on this relationship, right? So I'm just reading the spoiler that I wrote down to find a way to say without being a spoiler. Again, lots of questions of they're tackling the topics and filling in the gaps for us, but are they going to actually push it across the finish line? This is where the reviews seem to get really split. So we will kind of just park that question and acknowledge that they are trying to do things. We shall see how they do. It's also been really split on if this is Bridgerton's best love story yet. Some people are saying this is the best love story from Bridgerton. It is worlds away from what we've seen in season 1 and 2. It is the best, like, hands down. And there's other people saying that it is not the best love story from Bridgerton, and that it's really different, and it's in a bad way, and it doesn't meet the mark. So I think that just from reading all of these reviews, right, just like season 1 and 2, this show is really going to be impacted from what we look for in shows like this. Listen, for me, I don't think anything can top the love story we got in season 1. It spoke to a lot of the tropes that I look for in a love story. Like, we know season 1 was Liz's Bridgerton. There we go. It was good, right? So it's hard to say without seeing the context if this will be like vastly different, if it takes some pieces from the other seasons. But I wanted to ask you guys, and I wanted to ask everybody watching, I'm scrolling back up, with all of this kind of ambiguity in mind, what are some of our non-negotiables for what makes a love story fun to watch? Even with, I have to just cover the Duke of Hastings space, even knowing what we lean into and what we prefer to see. Like, what are some of the non-negotiables that if Queen Charlotte doesn't have it, I'm not gonna be sold by it. And I know this is a panel of people that really knows what they like in their media. So I'm excited to see what y'all have to say here. Sly, please take it away.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to me to this point that like this is the best love story yet. Arguably for me, we haven't seen a good love story so far. So like that means nothing to me. Is it on par with what we've seen, or is it actually gonna hit for me? When you pose this question, I put down 3 points of what makes a good love story to me. Consent, mutual respect, and proven ability to resolve conflict. We haven't seen a relationship in the show that has all three yet. So
we've seen consent though. I had that in my notes. We had consent in season 1. Oh, we do. This man right here, Consent King, says many times, do we keep going? Tell me no. Tell me yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah, one member of that relationship may have followed consent, but the other definitely did not.
I explicitly said this man. I explicitly said this man, Consent King. Anyway, some great points. And I really like your point about how we have not seen a couple that can resolve conflict yet on this show. So that would be really interesting to see explored here. Alexis, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a tricky question for me because usually when I think about this, I think about it in terms of like romances I enjoy to watch, which are that's a very different question than like what you're actually asking, right? So I agree with Sai. I think consent is a big deal. Obviously, I teach consent. Of course, I feel that way. But I think one of the things that Bridgerton at times struggles with is not understanding that consent and mutual respect are kind of inherently related, right? Like if somebody in your relationship is not consenting, there is arguably not respect for that person, right? But I think the other thing that is really important to me that it really sells a love story for me is when you have a person or both parties in the love story adapt some part of how they communicate their love to meet the needs of the other person, if that's making sense. So like, I don't like referencing love languages because the research that was based on is incredibly damaging and faulty and terrible. But that idea of like a love language, right? Of adapting your style to kind of meet the needs of the other person intentionally, that really sells a love story to me. I struggle with some of the love stories I think we see commonly, or the romance plots we see commonly on like mainstream network media now, where it's based off of like consent, mutual respect, and chemistry. The end, right? And that doesn't sell it for me. Like, I need to see that you're going to put in some of the work to make the other partner in the relationship like feel, valid and fulfilled.
100%. I am seeing some buzzwords in the comments here. Chemistry between the actors, I think, is really interesting, right? Because it's really obvious when the actors are just not the Ashton Kutcher of it all, right? With him and Reese Witherspoon in that movie where there's just no chemistry between them. Yeah. Gay people. I hope that we get the queer storyline that we've been promised. I would throw in pining. I need to see pining. It cannot go, we are in love right now. Like, no, something that Bridgerton does.
Love a mutually unrequited pining tag.
Yes. 1,000%.
But no, we don't.
Okay. Again, I love the spectrum we show on the show. Yeah, that was not a full we. That was a very this half of the screen we.
Liz is like, it can't happen right away. And I'm like, it needs to happen immediately. Like 2 paragraphs into the fic, they need to be madly in love with each other.
Liz and I love a slow burn.
I love a slow burn. I eat up a slow burn. Me with my fanfic that I've extended since October because it's a slow burn, and I've loved how slow it's burned for me. That's also a Bridgerton pun. The burn.
I was about to say, has it burned for
I
you?
did. That was a pun hat trick. I've done it, folks. Congratulations, me.
I get that reference. I understood that reference. Please
Love
continue.
a callback. Yeah, that is why that's my favorite season of Parks and Rec, just to throw that out there. Okay. One thing about Bridgerton in terms of pining that I really, really like is how they display it in the physicality of the characters, right? Because courting is such an interesting concept that they if Bridgerton wouldn't have made sense without courting because it's so instrumental to the time period, right? So I don't necessarily love courting plots. Like sometimes I find, I don't know, they kind of get stale for me. And Bridgerton goes so far on the spicy end of the spectrum that like courting and spiciness makes it like interesting to me, right? I'm like, oh, we get something different from this. And like, okay, I'm seeing laughter on screen. So like, Alexis, chime in here. Are we of a different mind when it comes to this?
I was laughing because I'm pretty sure Alexis was laughing because she saw the comment that I made in the private chat because I needed to make that comment and knew I was not allowed to do so on air.
That's a Patreon comment. That's what that was.
Alexis was also that there's a lot going on here, right? Alexis also laughed not only because of that, but because some of us really like a courting plot. Some of us really like there are rules to follow and expectations, and no one will be surprised, and we're forced to spend time together. Some of us
Listen.
explicitly got courted into their relationship.
No, but you know what? You know what? Again, I love how we all have different preferences on the show and we can talk about them. And to be fair, this fic that I have been reading since October, courting is the central tenet of it. So I'm not opposed to it. I like when there's like a twist on it. I like when it's not just like we follow this set of circumstances, right? So I love that Bridgerton like adds spicy like physical elements to how they do it. Like the hand touch in season 1 when they're in the art gallery and their hands like do this, like just those little moments that like push the slow burn along. So I would love to see that from Queen Charlotte. I want a little bit of slow burning, but I don't think we actually get it. I've heard more that it's not that kind of a slow burn of a show. But anyway, that's what I really enjoy seeing. Side eye in the comments. Okay. Let's also just talk about some of what we want to see, just rapid fire, like first thing that comes to your mind, some of the main tenets of what we talked about tonight, and feel free to play along in the comments as well. Just off the top of your head, what do you want to see from costuming in Queen Charlotte? First thing that comes to mind for me when I say that is I want to see like an evolution to Queen Charlotte, right? Like she doesn't come in as Queen Charlotte. So I want the costuming to tell that story. Sly?
Yeah, from the costuming, I would definitely like to see, I don't know, maybe an evolution in the style throughout the course of the show. That's totally not exactly what I was about to say. Thank you, Liz.
I love it. Alexis?
I love that there are really smart people on this show who are like, I want to see costuming develop. I love a fashion story. And I was over here like, I think the feathers are stupid. And so I really want to see them in this one too.
I love that take. That is a perfect
you.
take.
They all look like they're in Seussical the musical. And I would like that to continue.
I respect that. You know, the other literal thing I want to see more of is fans. I love the fan choreography. I think the choreography of it is really fun. So I want everybody to have excessive fans at all times.
That's very Princess Diaries coded of you.
And just
love to get the Marissa references.
Yeah. Really keeping Marissa alive tonight. And I would like to say for Marissa's benefit, Marissa last week said she would love to see what we accuse her of this week, because we historically, when Marissa's not been on the show, have accused her of many things. We haven't accused Marissa of anything tonight other than being smart. So Marissa, take the compliment. Next. Okay, what do we want to see from the dialogue and scripting? Sly, I'm going to let you start this time.
Oh, man. I think my desires for the dialogue and plot kind of intertwine. If they are tackling this idea of a Georgian era race relations storyline in this, alternate universe, I think the dialogue has to feel very genuine and authentic to the cultural understanding of different groups at that time. And I think the plot needs to honor what those stories look like for it to resonate with me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I'm having the exact reaction Alexis had. Last category. Alexis, anything you want to say on that?
So what I will say is I do enjoy the dialogue in Bridgerton. This is perhaps the only time in my life. Like I always, when I talk about media, I often compare myself to wanting to be like Sly, because Sly will be like, if you introduce me to a world, I will just jump in. And I'm like, I fundamentally will not until I like a character. And once I like that character, like if the office building is the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that's fine. I buy into that. Whatever, right?
This is where we is like
are the same person.
Like the top half of the screen.
Yeah. So
I will say I do suspend my disbelief for most things. I did watch a movie this week where I simply could not suspend my disbelief, and it may or may not be the second to last episode of MC University. So I'm just gonna
we love a plug.
So
blatant plug for that.
In the words of Marissa, plug. But I will say I am fine with the dialogue on Bridgerton. Like I largely buy into that. But I do think that they have a tendency to kind of avoid an actual discussion about the topic with these like buzz phrases that they know are going to distract us, right? Do I remember anything about the actual content in the I Burned For You conversation? No, because I Burned For You was the point of that conversation. So they could kind of cheat the other stuff. And I think in a show that is going to be more, presumably more focused on race relations, that some of those conversations need to happen without a buzz takeaway, so that there is actually like a meat and a discourse like in the conversation, because then that I think it's especially important in this show so that we know where they stand, because that's going to apply to other properties moving forward. So I think that clarity is going to be important. You want
the meat and potatoes of dialogue and not the appetizers of dialogue.
Okay. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, but it is not meant to be a pun based off of what you just said, Sly. This is genuinely what I wanted to say. I'm like that literally, I feel like I'm chewing on what you just said. Like I have so many thoughts. Like, oh, you just opened like the most delicious little trapdoor in my head to fall down. Oh, this is what I love about doing a show like this with you, like this community. Like I love how we've had so many conversations tonight that to me is setting me up for the discourse of what Queen Charlotte's going to be like. Now I get to go into that show thinking like, oh, are they dropping buzzwords to like avoid the topic, or like, oh, are they using like costuming to like, you know what I mean? Like I'm taking so much more conversation tonight. So thank you guys. Thanks everyone for watching this one. Yeah, for giving. That's such a gift to go into the show with. Okay, let's rapid fire through a few more of these. Plot devices. I have one that is a little bit more on the silly side. Food. Because in a time period like this, there's only so many environments that you can put your people in. Like they introduced cricket in season 2 because it was like, we have to give them another thing. We have to give them another thing to do. Let's make them cricket players. Like, let's just, yes, that is the thing now that they do. And I love how mealtime is one of the only plot devices they have to move through the day. It's one of the only things that like marks the passing of time, right? One of the things I want to see more of from food in this show, right, is like the idea of the person who is so unaware when they're stuffing their face. I think that's like a very funny physical comedy moment that like is one of the, to me, it's one of the most obvious things you can lean into with food. Like someone's like, what did they say? What are we doing? Like their cheeks just like stuffed like a chipmunk full of food. And if that's one of the only plots that you can use, like lean into that kind of fantastical choreography, you know, like drop food on the floor, drop silverware, stuff your face. Like, I think that's all very fun. And I'd like to see them like nose dive into exploring all the fun that can be had with food and meals. Yeah.
Give us more the youngest two siblings throwing peas at each other during family dinner time. Like, that's so fun.
I'm looking forward to season 3 if it has more of this written into it. Any plot devices that you two want to see in Queen Charlotte? Because I know we can move on.
Yeah, I would love to have more clear understanding of who the regent is, how we are considering this the regency, what's going on with that, because I have lots of questions about how we're quantifying the regency era within this alternate universe.
Alexis
agreeing with that. Big yeah.
That's just a very sly thing to say. Which I mean positively, but it just reminded me of similar conversations that have been had about the hierarchy in certain other shows. So I really like that you said that. That's really meaningful to me personally. I would say on a sillier note, unlike Liz, I want another random ass activity that makes no sense.
Oh yes.
Like, make it like we had the underground fight club, which I have an essay on my computer right now that's just questions I have about the management of this underground fight club and like how that works. Apparently we have cricket, we have hunting a little bit in the beginning of season 2. Like, it could be synchronized swimming for all I care. I just want like another random ass activity that is never mentioned before the moment that everybody is involved in it and then is not mentioned again.
You know, one that I think would be fun? Stables. Why not more time with the horses? The horsies. Let's like hang out with the horses a little bit. Let's you know, we saw a lot of like break away on the horse. Like, we've seen that through Bridgerton. Let's hang out in the stables a little bit more. It's also very Gossip Girl coded of me because it's one of
and I must have also been in a Gossip Girl mood because you were like, let's have some more breakaway moments with the horses, and all I heard was Kelly Clarkson's breakaway over like a horse montage. It was a little too much for me, I'm gonna be honest.
Oh my God. I love this show. Okay. Let's end the show with doing a little bit of rapid fire, go through the notes. So everyone like go to the notes took for when you were watching, and let's pull out some of the highlights of what we wrote down. I didn't take a lot of notes this week.
I have 2 seasons and a book's worth of notes.
And I didn't take, usually I am viewers, please know that historically I am the one with 18 pages of notes that wreaks havoc on this document and everybody involved. And this time I think I maybe have a paragraph. I have no notes this week.
Okay, I'll start. All of my notes can really be summarized with like, I was really loving how sassy Daphne was, and the Duke. But there's a couple lines from Daphne that I'll start with when she's like, at the beginning of the Burn For You scene, she goes, I do not want any dinner. And I was like, say it, girl. Absolutely. That's such a slave for not. I do not want any dinner. I was like, pop off. You will in 5 minutes. But like, I liked the drama of it. It was very fun. Alexis.
I have Marissa had thoughts about Daphne's baby bangs, and for the life of me, I cannot remember those thoughts. And I hoped that those thoughts would be in the hair video, and they were not. So, Marissa, when you rewatch this, I need you to explain the baby bangs thoughts in the
Maybe they were in the 10-minute cut.
Yeah, they were in one of the extended scenes. Yeah.
Sly.
The brothers' conversation in 1/6 was truly excellent.
I watched 1/6 and 1/7 because I was like, I just need to get to the crux of the stuff, the relationship, so I can remember how it. Like, if I watch the peak of a season, then I can remember everything that happened before and after. But if I had started with episode 1, I wouldn't have remembered any of the end of the season. So, I went to 1/6 and immediately was laughing at. Oh my God, she's in Marissa's video, the Featheringtons. And when she goes, wear a dress again. And I was like, that summarizes their entire plot of this season is being poor and not wanting to wear the same thing twice. I was like, perfect episode
Poor.
to watch to remember that entire series of events in that one line.
The Featheringtons are really like they're poor in the way that like in Sense and Sensibility the Dashwoods are poor. They're not poor by any stretch of the
trying
imagination.
to keep up appearances and we don't have the
Yeah.
funds to do so. Yeah. Who's next? I'm forgetting the order we were going in. Is it Alexis next?
Sure. So this note is about the garden scene in the first season where they promptly start making out. They like look at each other for a while and then they start making out. And I very astutely wrote, I have decided, read the garden scene, that this is what attraction is like for non-asexual umbrella people.
Good note. A good note. Sly?
I had a shout out to Philip in season 1 for trying to provide for his dead brother's kid, and I'm pretty sure that's Philip Crane is who I was talking about. And then I also had a point in season 2 that I'm just gonna loop in here, where I said BRB looking up Colin/Crane fanfic update. There's only 4 RIP.
And that is our official call out of the week of the fanfic we'd like to see in the world. We could do an entire compilation of just the gaps in AO3 that we call out regularly on this show. I'm going to speak for Marissa. She has some notes in here I'd like to call out, and they are also on her Instagram. This falls under Marissa's Bridgerton hot takes that she will not elaborate on. Anthony is an asshole, and I simply don't care. I am pro that man. And that goes back to what she said last week about being pro man, and there was a whole bit about that. You can go back and watch.
Mm-hmm.
And then she follows up in the Marissa's lukewarm takes that everyone will agree with. Hold on, I have to find it. Because this is under the category, and I guess we're agreeing with this. Season 2 is unmatched, and if I don't get more Canthony in my life soon, things will get violent.
That certainly is totally a take that everyone agrees with. Sure.
Maybe she meant it in a different, maybe she just continued her notes and didn't properly categorize these.
I will say I personally agreed with all of her hot takes and did not agree with her lukewarm takes overall.
I disagreed with a couple. I agreed with most of the hot takes. But yeah.
So if you want to see all the hot takes, you can go to Instagram. They're all posted on Marissa's story at Missa Bobissa. We will plug her. You can find me on the internet at producer Liz, talking about all the PR happening. This is a great time to plug. The Met Gala is on Monday. And we're probably going to go live during the Met Gala on TikTok and tell you about what's happening when people are arriving. So if you want to see what we do there, follow at After Party Show on Twitter and on Instagram. Yes, SHO, thank you. And we'll post all the info for our Met Gala watch party. So if you want to see our opinions as things are happening, some combination of people will be live watching. Alexis, please go ahead and plug your stuff.
I am at Just Alexis Blake on TikTok and Instagram, where I have not updated in I don't know how long because I got busy with school. But now that school is kind of done, you may see more content about me and the insanity that is my life every day.
And Sly.
You can't find me anywhere because I'll be on hiatus, so I'm hijacking the rest of the show to share some more of my notes because I think there's good quality stuff in here. Sorry, Liz, to totally take over your show. I think what was episode 1-7, I said Daphne is simply the least interesting sibling, and I will not apologize for that. And then my first note in book 1 was Daphne is like ? A whole ass character ? I also have in my notes take a shot and then listed a lot of common words like member and growled for the book. Also in the book, I quoted the part where she's like stuttering or whatever, and then he's like, one more but, he teased, and then you're gonna sound like me. And I was like, he's got jokes. We love to see it. Season 2, I started a tally that whenever I wanted to talk about how much I loved a character, I just added a +1 to a note. So I loved Lady Danbury so much, +5. I love Benedict so much +6. And I also wrote somewhere in here. Oh god, I can't find it. Oh, I know that signet rings are accurate for the time period, but there's just something so gay and a little slutty about a pinky ring, in my opinion. And that's where we'll leave it for the night.
Wow, we could have spent 2 hours just talking about signet rings.
The thoughts I have.
Oh wow, that's some Patreon content right there. Okay, enjoy Queen Charlotte premiering on Thursday. Updates on our next show and our Met Gala live stream is going to be all an after party show, so you can follow everywhere at After Party Show. And thanks for watching this very special Bridgerton special. I was gonna write an outro using ChatGPT and Lady Whistledown style, and then didn't. So we don't have something special. Sorry. I don't really have an outro because that's what I was planning. I only just realized I didn't do it. I'll make a notes app apology. And I will stick by my promise of finishing my fanfic. So you can all yell at me next week if I don't do it. Anything else anyone wants to publicly commit to on air? Sly's going to be offline. We're going to miss you so much for the next foreseeable future.
If you're watching this live, come hang out for the live table reading tomorrow. It'll be my last live event before I'm on hiatus. And if you don't see me on any social medias, I promise I'm not dead. I'm just blocking them all. So
we love to see it. We love to see it. All right, we'll see you guys on Monday for the Met Gala live stream. See you there. Bye.
Bye.